Hey, good morning to another episode of Talking to Artists. Today we're actually at episode 48, so getting close to the big 5-0, and been doing this coming up to almost a year now, so that's kind of pretty amazing. So Talking to Artists really is for artists to help them share some of the business tips and techniques and things that inspire them these days, as well as for art collectors to help them kind of understand a little bit about what goes on in the life of a professional artist and what it takes to actually get that piece on the wall. So I'm really excited today to talk to Olga Houghton. I knew I was going to screw up her name. Sorry about that, Olga. So she is actually a transplant from Toronto originally, and she's now based in Surrey. So pretty excited to talk to her. She's an educator, an artist, as well as runs an online gallery and an art consultant. So lots to talk about. Before that, I just wanted to kind of say thank you for everybody who was patient at the Square Foot show yesterday. Incredible interest, and as a result, the site kind of crashed. But hopefully you got what you were looking for. It's pretty much sold out, I think, now, so that's kind of exciting. I'm also in tonight. There's actually the Art Gallery of Hamilton show opens online, so I encourage you to take a look at that. There's about 60 regional artists that are all really amazing, so there's kind of great stuff there. As well as I'm part of Rave New York, which is an online live streamed show that's happening this weekend as well. And I'm doing an interview tonight at around 7:20, 7:15 about my work and my inspiration, which you guys have probably heard 1,000 times before. But if you want to hear it again, you can join me at 7:20. And tomorrow I'm actually part of a panel that is talking a little bit about how artists and galleries have pivoted during COVID, what we need to do to move forward, and how we think these changes are going to kind of affect the industry moving forward. So that is tomorrow, Friday at 7:20. You can find a link to my bio under Rave New York or Redwood Media Group. So anyway, hope to see you there. So I'm just going to see whether or not Olga has joined us. If she's here, I'm hoping that she is. There she is, and I will just go straight on and invite her on. Oh, Olga, looks like you need the latest version of Instagram to join. So that means you're going to have to update your Instagram before I can invite you. So that means I've got to babble on for a little bit longer. One of the things I was pretty excited about last night, it was the Square Foot show was the first time I've actually really kind of shown for sale this new collection I have behind me. It's not really a new collection, it's more of a more whimsical version maybe of my Energy in Motion. So that was pretty exciting, and I was happy to sell the 3 pieces there. And it's kind of always nice. I mean, you as an artist, you always paint what creates joy in your heart and what you really want to paint, but it is kind of nice to know that what you're painting is actually of interest to other people. So that's kind of fun, and I'm working on a couple of other pieces like that too. One of the other pieces of news is that the show that my sister and I were going to do, My Family Garden, at the Leslie Grove Gallery in June, has now been moved back to September, partially because of the lockdown in Toronto. We're not totally sure she can actually get here and isolate and stuff in terms of doing that before the show opens. But also I can't get my panels. The show basically is all 60-inch panels, and I can't get them until the middle of June. So that creates a bit of a barrier to running a show in June. So that's going to be September 14th. So pretty excited about that, and stay tuned. The other thing is I'm super excited to be part of the Toronto Outdoor. Unfortunately not in person this year, which is not unexpected, but I was kind of hoping because I'm an optimist. So anyway, excited to do that online, and it'll be nice to kind of have a specific goal to work towards. So that's pretty cool. And I'm also part of the, I think it's called Art with Heart program. And so that's where artists will donate a certain portion of money that actually goes to gift certificates for frontline workers. So I've donated $500 to this program, which means you can kind of go online and I guess if you're a frontline worker, you get the certificate and then you can get a cool piece of art. So that's pretty fun, and I'm excited to be part of that. So we'll just, looks like Olga is back. Oh, good, because I was running out of stuff to say. There's only so much I can babble about. Hey!
Hi. Hi there.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I had my COVID shot yesterday. So, I was feeling okay for a while, and then I had just major shakes most of the night and a migraine, so I'm a little bit dozy this morning, but feeling good today.
Well, I'm impressed that you're doing this interview. I had mine on Saturday. So you and me both are probably going to be maybe a little bit spacey, or I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I feel a bit like that. And last night was so weird because I had like major shakes. My husband was laughing at me because he's like, the whole bed is shaking. But you know, you when you're like that, normally when you're like that, you feel crappy. I didn't really feel crappy. I was just really cold. So anyway,
Right.
but and he had no ill effects at all. So
Yeah,
that's
I was a bit
good
like
and
your
interesting.
husband, I must
Yeah.
admit. I'm one of those smug people where I didn't really have too bad an effect. I felt a bit jet lagged on Monday, but
Hmm.
otherwise fine.
I've kind of heard that too. My brother said it was not actually the next day; it was the day after that he kind
Yeah.
of started to crash again. But yeah, you know, whatever. It's coming up for the weekend. I can just kind of hang out and sleep and whatever. So yeah, very excited to talk to you because we have never talked and never really met, but of course done lots of DMing and notes and stuff through Instagram. So and I love the fact. So you're originally from Toronto and now you're in Surrey, UK. Which whereabouts is Surrey in England?
So it's what they call the home counties, and it's sort of southwest, I would say, of London.
Oh, okay, all
But I
right.
can drive into London in 45 minutes.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, my family's from Suffolk, so they're north, and I was born actually in Cambridge. So I was trying to orient myself to where that would be.
Yeah, I
So
saw that you were born in Cambridge. I read it somewhere on your bio or anyway.
yeah, it's the one little piece of interesting international flair I can add because I came to Canada when I was like 2, so it's not really it's
Right.
kind of pushing that experience. So how did you end up over in the UK? Tell me about your story.
Wow, that's quite a story, Kate. Do you have an
Excellent. We
hour?
have an hour. We do.
Um, so I actually trained to be a teacher in Toronto at U of T, and I taught for 2 years with the Toronto District School Board at a school called Samuel Hearn, um, which is sort of East Scarborough. And
Mhm.
um, it's really forward thinking and great what the Toronto District School Board have decided is, I don't know if it's still in place, but after 2 years you get your tenure, your permanent contract. And I sort of thought, well, yeah, I've always wanted to be a teacher, but I kind of want to see the world too. And is this it? I mean, am I going to sort of stay in Toronto, and which is a great city and I really miss it, but I thought, yeah, I really want to travel and teach. So I had been working for a Japanese company before I went to Teachers College. And I really loved the tea ceremony and the formality of sort of the clients. And sorry, and so I a bit nervous. So I decided I wanted to teach in Japan, and so
Oh, cool.
I went over there for a year. And because the Toronto District School Board said, well, you can have up to 2 years sabbatical, I came back to Toronto in time for my nephew's birth, and I thought, this is great, and it's lovely to see everyone, but I have another year. I should take advantage. So I came to London, and then I didn't come back. So here I am.
So what did you teach in Japan? Were you teaching art and art history or?
I wasn't actually. I was teaching English as a foreign language.
Okay.
But I
That
did
sounds
some art
fascinating.
there, and I did some art courses, and was really interested in Japanese culture. And um, I forget the name of it, but there's this lovely sort of pottery, and when it breaks, they fill it with gold, and it's sort of this
Oh, yeah.
imperfect perfection.
Begins with a K.
Hey, kabani, or I'm making that up.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's basically the concept, isn't it, of something that's broken and you put it together and make it something even more beautiful than the original.
Absolutely.
And what a lovely concept.
What a lovely
Yeah.
concept. It's something we sort of need to take with us, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think especially now you look at how much of our society is broken and our systems are broken and
Mm.
you know, and it's a nice thing to think, I think, that, you know, broken isn't always bad. It just means the start of something new and something fresh and maybe something better than what we had before.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And so you ended up in England.
I
And
did.
so teaching again.
Teaching again, teaching art this time.
Yeah.
And again, I thought I'd be here for a year, 2 years, turned to three, four. And then I met my husband um, when I had a one-way ticket booked to come back to Toronto. And a job lined up. I had a telephone interview with the Toronto District School Board, and they must be thinking, this girl really, doesn't want to come back.
We're
So,
trying to hire her.
yeah. So again, I decided it wasn't quite the right time, and stayed. And then we moved out of London via Toronto one more time.
Yeah.
7 years ago, we left London, moved to Ontario. It's a very long story. And I sponsored my husband to come to Canada. But it just wasn't the right fit. It was sort of square peg, round hole, and things weren't falling into place. So we made the decision to come back and settled. But, you know, we said we left London for a reason, and we wanted, you know, to move to Canada. We've got 2 girls and we wanted that outdoor experience. So my husband said, no, let's not look back in London. Let's look outside of London, because he needs to access London for work. And we thought, well, let's go somewhere that feels more Canadian, really. There's a lovely lake up the road, and we can walk the dog in these, you know, beautiful vistas. And so we're really, really happy and settled here now.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, it's almost a similar story. My mom was actually, she was, you know, born in England or whatever, lived there. And she was set to go to Australia to be a nurse. And then she met my dad. And so it was like within weeks, right? It's like, yeah, nope, I'm not going to Australia, going to Canada, marrying this Canadian guy who's actually Estonian, but now living in Montreal, you know, and it's like,
wow. Yeah,
it's amazing how fast things can change, right? When you find someone and maybe sometimes exposed to things you didn't even know you wanted.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's that I think John Lennon sang or said that quote, that life happens when you're busy making plans. And I think it's really important that you know, that we're always open to possibilities and we respond to those as much as we try to plan our lives out. I don't actually do very well that way, I think. So.
Well, I'm a huge fan of sort of serendipity, like, you know, just embracing things that kind of come about, right? And of course, not a lot's happening right now, but there's kind of often there are times that are like that. And when my daughter did an exchange in Sydney in Australia, and I said, look, just basically say yes. Like, say yes, unless it's like something really illegal or stupid. But generally say yes, even if you're uncomfortable with it, because it pushes your boundaries and it pushes your experience, and you get so much more out of doing something than regretting not doing something, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, you've got one life, you might as well live it, and life is for living. And I know in COVID times now, it's harder to do that, but that's why I think, you know, you setting up something like this Talking to Artists series is so inspired, because it allows, you know, that international connection. And for me, it allows me to plug into my Canadian heritage and culture. And I can see there's lots of friends and family in Toronto, but also in England and Australia. And it becomes, you know, we're sort of meeting in one place online.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful.
Well, and it's, you know, and again, that was totally one of those serendipity, totally selfishly motivated things, right? Because I'm like, yeah, I kind of miss my peeps. I miss my people. I miss talking to people. I miss talking to people I know nothing about, you know. And it's one thing to obviously have your family and friends around, which is amazing. But, you know, I miss those conversations that happen at art fairs where you know nothing about someone, how you find a connection, right? So,
yeah, no, that's
so
right.
yeah, I've sort of enjoyed this a lot. Yeah, it's been good. And so are you still teaching?
Yes.
Or are you now an artist?
I teach part-time. I made the move 2 or 3 years ago. I had a big sort of job at a boarding school down the road as head of art, and it was 6 days a week because it is a boarding school. And
Oh, wow.
I felt my art, you know, wasn't happening as much. I had a great outlet through the children I teach, but I felt like a frustrated artist because they were having so much fun, and I really wanted to have some fun too. So, and also my girls are older now, and you know, they were at an age where they're sort of like, oh, that looks interesting, Mummy. What's that? Can I use it? And you know, now they're a bit older and they let me have my time and space. So I think it's just come at the right time for me to sort of launch myself really as an artist at last, you know.
That's amazing. So last week I talked to Karen Taylor, who is actually Scottish, and then she came. So she lived in London for a while and showed, I think, at Covent Garden Market, I think, with her jewelry and stuff. And then she's moved to Toronto now. And she was saying at that time it was really, really hard as an independent artist to find shows and opportunities and places to promote and sell your work. Is that still the case in the UK, or what's the difference, do you think, in Canada and the US or in the UK?
That's a really good question, Kate, because I guess I consider myself an emerging artist, even though I have felt an artist my whole life. I've emerged as a professional artist only recently, and I've taken part in sort of collectives and charity exhibitions, but I haven't approached a gallery. So I haven't done the bricks and mortar, and now in COVID, the poor galleries had to close down.
Mm-hmm.
So personally for me, I have found Instagram a fantastic platform, and have had a lot of interest and have managed to sell some work, which is fantastic.
That's great.
Which is great. And what's really popular here is something called the Affordable Art Fair in London. And it's huge. It's become really huge. And I used to go in the past as well. But what's really exciting is that there's lots of people that have set up regional art fairs and for more local artists. So they're happening all the time, and I'm going to be taking part in one in July, actually. My first art fair as an independent artist rather than a collective.
Nice.
So I'm excited about that, but I'm hoping, you know, I can learn a little bit more from artists like yourself who are more established. And again, I want to be open to possibilities, and you know, so I haven't had the gallery representation before. I think our generation in the past, for me, that's the ultimate. But I think it's changing in that there's different avenues. You can have gallery representation, you can do your own art fairs, you can be online, maybe a little bit of everything, but obviously picking and choosing the right things so that there's not any conflicts.
Yeah, that's sort of what my philosophy has been, and partially I know a lot of artists who love gallery representation because they don't like doing the art fairs. They don't want to stand and schlep their tent across the park. They don't want to stand and talk to people for 4 days. Whereas I love that. So I'm like, yeah, bring it on. Like, I don't want to give up my art fairs because I like that people connection, right? So
yeah,
I think you have to kind of do what feeds your soul, right?
Absolutely. And you do a lot of art fairs, I notice. And
less now.
Less now. No. But congratulations on the square foot show. It sounded like it went
Thanks.
really well.
Yeah, it was crazy. I sold all 3 pieces, and my sister, who's an artist, sold her 5, and actually almost everyone did. So that's kind of great. And then I got into the Toronto Outdoor, so I'm pretty excited about that. But right now I'm supposed to be I normally would be doing the Art Expo in New York. So it's kind of, I'm doing it online, but which will be great, but it's kind of like not quite the same as, you know, hanging out in New York and, you know, all the dinner and the people and the energy. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it'll come again. I think in some ways for me, I was on such a go train in terms of, you know, like I said before, someone mentioned something, I'm like, yep, going to do that. That looks like fun. That sounds good. And didn't always take the time to sit down and think about whether or not that made strategic sense and whether or not I had the gas in the tank to do all this stuff. Right. So this has provided a little bit of a kind of a break that way. So we'll see. I'm sure people who know me are laughing because they're like, yeah, Kate, you're not going to slow down once things open up again. But I feel like I'm going to think about it.
So that's good to hear. And that helps me because so what you're saying is you say yes to everything. But obviously
pretty much
pace yourself. So, right. Yeah. Because I'm trying.
And I've literally said yes to things where they're kind of like, oh, can you do this show in 2 weeks? And you're like, yeah, I have no work. I have no idea how to do it. First time I did the artist project, I think I had 3 days notice because I was on a wait list.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, wow, I've never done this show before and I don't know anything about it. But, you know, you guess you put it together. I think the other thing is hopefully you'll find this in where you are too, is, you know, Toronto's got a very tight, close, supportive art community, which I think is super nice because then you do have people you can go to who, you know, are not competitive and they just want to help you succeed. Yeah. And that's kind of my philosophy too. So that works out pretty well. I
actually am amazed since joining Instagram as an artist, how positive the community is, both locally and internationally. I have met such lovely people and on Instagram, sort of like yourself, not live, my first live, but
you're doing great.
Some local artists that I've just sort of asked a question or tapped, you know, had a conversation, and they've been so generous of their time, and it's been really positive. And I don't know if that's because, especially now with COVID, but I think generally artists are people that like to help because everyone starts somewhere, don't they? So
Exactly. And I think especially if you've, I mean, all of us got to where we are on the backs and the support and the mentoring of other people and other artists, right? And I think that it is nice to be able to pay back kind of where you can, you
Absolutely.
know, and then there's kind of that continuous kind of circle, which is good. I was just going to say that in 2 weeks, Angela and I are doing another kind of how-to session on how to do and how to prepare for an outdoor show. So
Okay.
you might be
I'll
interested
be
in catching
watching.
that because we're going
Yeah.
to talk a little bit about that, like tents and moving in and wind and rain and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And the British weather, I mean, you never know what you're going to get.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I mean, Toronto weather too these days, like we had one
True.
year, a couple of years ago, it's like, oh, now there looks like there's tornado warnings, which, in Toronto is super unusual, right?
Yes.
Then you're looking at the sky going green. I'm like, should I move? Should I pack up? Should I stay?
Yeah.
But it was cool. So I loved your kind of comment on your website about the fact that you have this the 2021 word of the week or word of the year or something, which is joy.
Yeah, it's joy this year for me.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a concept one. So I've got two really great friends from Teachers College, and we stay in touch. And every time in Toronto, we have a big blowout, lunch or dinner, lots of wine involved. And my one friend said that she got this idea where you choose a word of the year that just might help you, just to sort of remind you of maybe what you want to get out of the year ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all have a think, and then we share our words with each other. So this year my word is joy, and I think that's really tied in with my art, because I had some great advice from an artist I met a few years ago when I did an exhibition with him. He's a local artist, Paul Treasure, and I hugely look up to him. He is such a lovely, understated guy, and he said, he struggled with dyslexia when he was in school and was totally misunderstood. And it was art really that really sort of was his therapy. And he said, and I was this nervous emerging artist and really didn't have a lot of confidence. And he said, Olga, it's such simple advice. Just as long as you do things with joy, it will show in the work. Because if you're not enjoying it, it shows in the work. And so,
Yeah, I totally agree.
something so simple, but actually I
Mm-hmm.
think we overcomplicate things, we overthink things all the time. So I thought that's a gem, and I just took that word with me.
Yeah. Well, in my work too, like it's all about kind of the joy and trying to capture the joy and the energy, and so I do feel I had a couple of a bit of time in the beginning of January this year where I just wasn't feeling the joy, and the pieces I tried to produce, I look at them now and I'm like, yeah, I just may as well paint over them. Like they're tight and they're kludgy and they don't have the right energy. So I've sort of learned now not to try and force it. Like I could try and do things to get myself in the right frame of mind because I'm typically a pretty optimistic person. But if it's not there, it's not there. And that's the days when you clean the studio and do your edges and do Instagram, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you were saying that you sell on Instagram. What's your secret for that? Like, how do you do that, or how do you structure that?
um the truth is I don't know. I don't know. I think so I launched in November as an artist on Instagram, and I started with these little panels, these sort of wildlife panels. And they're
Oh,
original
lovely.
drawings that I then mount onto painted wood, and they're lovely and chunky, and then I embellish with gold or silver leaf. And it was maybe a little bit like the Toronto's, what's it called? The show, I've forgotten it now. Gosh, I haven't lived in Toronto for 20 years, but there's this fantastic show which also went online this year, I noticed. And we had a virtual high street, Haslemere, on Facebook. So I was approached and said, why don't you put some of these on the virtual high street, Haslemere? So I did, and they sold. I mean, they people really liked them, and they bought them in 2s and 3s, and they gave them as gifts. And then it just started from there. So I put some paintings that I had already, and then I just carried on painting, and I try to sort of post regularly, but I try to make it something that connects with me, you know. I try to maybe talk a little bit about what I'm doing, what my inspiration is, something about the process. And I think people like reading a little bit more about the story behind the work. So I think maybe it's the image that I post, but also what I write that resonates with people. That's what they tell me anyway.
Well, so they feel like they have an emotional connection to you, and
I think
as the artist as well as the work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm still working on it. I don't know. I find that, you know, you do all this reading, and then it's kind of, sometimes it's hard to, you know, you want to be authentic, but sometimes it's like, I don't think I have anything to say today. I just don't think I'm interesting enough that people want to know all this shit about me. You know
what? I find you're right. Sometimes I don't have much to say. And I try to, once the girls are asleep and, you know, I feel on top of things. You're right. I never feel on top of things here, but I might prepare something the night before. And then I just read it over in the morning. If it still agrees, or if I still think that looks okay, then I press send. So I feel I need the time with it as well. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Like, I find it's the same as with painting, isn't it? Like, you know, I find I'll paint all day and I'll feel like really energized, and you don't really know if it's working till the next day when you can kind of look at it a bit fresh.
Yes.
And then sometimes it's obvious where it's like, oh, that's not working, or this is way further along than I thought it was.
That's so true, actually. Yes, you have to, you need to go away, walk the dog or what have you, and then come back and look with fresh eyes, and suddenly you see things you didn't see. But I like how you put your paintings upside down sometimes, or sideways, ask people what they think, and you know, it's really fun.
Well, and to me, I work flat, so it's kind of, it's help. I don't really have an up and a down, like, because I don't work on an easel. But I sort of, for me, compositionally, I like the challenge of seeing if I can make it work compositionally in all four orientations.
Okay.
And so that sometimes helps me too. When I feel like there's something not quite working and I can't quite articulate what it is. Sometimes I'll take a black and white photograph of it, but sometimes just even turning it upside down, and you're like, oh yeah, I can totally see now where there's a piece that's chunky or is just not working somehow.
Yes, I also do the upside down trick, and not always black and white, but I find even if I take a photograph, why is it that we can see much clearly through the photograph than our own eyes?
I don't know. I think the brain must be processing it differently. I've thought that same thing. Yeah, it's exactly the same. And sometimes when you're ready to send something to a client, you're like, yeah, no, can't send it yet. It's just not quite working. I need to tweak it a little bit more.
That's right.
Yeah, which makes it kind of fun. So talking of clients, I was looking on your website. It looks like you do a lot of commissions as well.
I have been doing commissions, yes.
Yeah. And how are you finding that process? Is that something new with COVID, or is it something you've always done?
I would say it's new with COVID, because I launched during a lockdown here in COVID times. So that's
pretty brave.
It was. It was a lovely focus. You know, my girls were being really creative with various projects, and I thought, I'm kind of envious. So I was kind of helping them with their initiatives, and I thought I need to start, which is when I did the panels. So yes, I then had people approaching me about commissions. I think I painted some birch trees, and they sold, and then someone said, oh, could you do one similar? And then it went from there. So I've got one I need to paint that's going to Greece.
Nice.
Going to Sydney, Australia, and another one that's going locally here. And then I've had people approach me about, could you paint the scene for us? We have a holiday home in France, for example, and we really love the combination of cherry blossoms with snow on the mountains and that in between season, which I know you had yesterday. My sister
did, yeah.
Of snow all over the magnolia tree. It looked beautiful, but she was not impressed.
No, I know. It's kind of like, the snow was fun for a while, but now we're kind of done with it.
Yes, but it's all melted away, I've heard now.
Not here. I still have a couple of inches.
Yeah, okay. It's coming, don't worry.
I know, it will. I'm positive. And so how do you approach your commissions?
So it's an interesting question, because again, I'm learning, and I think you definitely want the client to be happy, and you want to sort of speak to them. And again, it's all been online and COVID and phone calls, so can't meet in person really. So it's been sending photographs, and then I might sketch something or do a mock-up and send it through, and then we chat about that. And then what I try to do, which I think is really helpful because it helps them feel a part of the process. Just, I'm thinking if it were me, if I was commissioning someone to do painting, I think in a way it would be fun to say, can you go and do this, and then be surprised. But it's nice to sort of see the process.
Most people are a little more control mongering than that.
Yeah. So I send process videos and photographs and then just questions. So I had the image I was sent recently was a portrait landscape, but a portrait rather, but the client wanted landscape. So I had to change the image compositionally. And I just wanted to check that with them, but they totally understood why, and so it was fine. So so far so good.
That sounds good. Yeah, no, I think you're right though. I mean, there's a psychology in play there as well, right? So the more engaged they are and the more they feel like they're part of the process,
Right.
the less likely they are at the end of the day not to love what's kind of finished, because they've already sort of invested so much time and energy into it, right?
Yes, and you've got something really forward-thinking called the zero
The
risk.
zero risk commission policy, yeah.
And I watched your video on that, and that's what a fantastic idea.
Well, again, it was born of the fact that I did a commission, and it was one of those classic ones where the client originally, this was many years ago, over 10 years ago now, but the client kind of said, I don't want to direct the artist because I want it to be your work, obviously, because I like your work, which was fine. And I took him at his word until I realized that that's actually not the case, because then he started directing it and directing it and directing it. And as I was trying to deliver what he wanted, the painting was getting tighter and tighter. And finally, I'm like, yeah, this is it's not working. I'm not happy with it. Even if he loves it, I don't feel comfortable him having it. And so I actually painted something completely different than what he asked for, but I felt like it was actually what he was looking for, like in terms of the energy that he was looking for, which ended up being spot on. So that was a really important lesson for me, because it's kind of like, just because someone says something doesn't mean that's really actually what they want, and you have to decipher what they're kind of meaning. And I kind of learned from that, I need to do the piece the way it needs to be done. And if the client doesn't love it, that's fine. At least I now have a piece that's strong, versus that first one where if the client doesn't like it, I've got a piece that's crappy. I can't do anything with it, right?
Yeah.
So it alleviates a lot of stress on my side, as well as, of course, the client's side.
Yes, I did. You're absolutely right. I think you have to be true to yourself as an artist when you're doing a commission. And I recently had a commission, which I also was getting a bit stressed about, and you reminded me about it. And it was quite a cool one. It was a husband that wanted a portrait of his wife done, but I'm not really a portrait artist. I do figure drawing classes and life drawing classes, and I do figures, but trying, going for a likeness would mean really having the model sit there, and now it's COVID times, and that's wasn't really allowed at the time, although we are opening up now in England. So I was working off of images, and then I was just honest, like you said, and I just said, oh look, this is great for me, this is a really good challenge, but I'm thinking of this and that, and I showed him a few ideas, and he said, that's great, yeah, go for it. And I didn't realize, I was more worried that he wanted it done a certain way, but actually he was really sort of just, he had seen sort of my style, and he said, totally make it your style. This is just, obviously a photograph to work from.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be a perfect example of my wife, and, her nose just so, and her, her hair. So I was worrying, and I didn't need to.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other part too. Is that the worry kind of creates a whole level of stress level. So is that where your continuous line drawings kind of came from? Because I just love those. They're so cool.
Okay. Yes, I would say so. I really miss my life drawing classes. And what I did was I took them all out, and I put them all around me, and I looked at them as I did my one-line drawings. So drawing is obviously really good for us as artists, isn't it? And if we do it every day, if anyone does it every day, then you get better and better. So it was a way for me to sort of stay in tune with the skill of looking carefully and keeping in mind the figure proportion, but also that continuous line and not being able to lift it is...
It's hard.
Intense. Yes. And
it is.
Yeah, it's good for us, right? It's sort of, you've tried it. You've sent me your images.
I did, yeah. I was, because I was really inspired. And, I love blind contour drawings too.
Yes.
And so when I was doing my Creative Adventures events, which we, of course, can't do now, but I used to always make people do blind contour. And because, it really makes you really look at what you're drawing and not what you think you're going to draw. And I found the same with the continuous line. I really enjoyed them. But it's really hard. And I found myself, especially because I was mostly doing trees, because that's what's here, I found myself very quickly going into, I'm going to draw the tree the way I think it is versus what I'm actually seeing. And I had to really kind of concentrate on trying to pull it back.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I've had a few people, people I know, but people I don't. I think there's a lovely lady in Vancouver who's sent me hers, and Deanne Fitzpatrick, sorry.
Oh yeah, she's in the East Coast. She's the rug hooker. Yeah, because I interviewed her a couple months ago.
That's right. And I saw that interview. It's fantastic. She does the hooking rugs, doesn't she?
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited. She's sending me a starter kit, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the. Yeah, I might do the same. I might copy you. So I had a Vancouver artist get in touch, and then also East Coast artist Deanna get in touch, and she wants to meet me tomorrow to discuss one-line drawings. So,
cool.
It's been really lovely because I think it's kind of, I think people, they're quite relaxing to watch, I've been told, and it's something I think we can all do, is just needs some practice, and it doesn't have to be figures, it can be vases, it can be plants, it can be trees like you did yourself.
Although I do find, when I've done blind contour drawing, it's typically figures, because usually we're kind of doing it in a situation where, Angela's the model or whatever, I draw her just to kind of show the group what to do. And I find actually figures are easier, and I think I like them better than trees. And partially maybe because trees are a lot of straight lines. I typically like things that are curvy, and I like the fact of your figures where they are curvy, and you've got the curls that kind of make those connections and stuff. So I think I'm going to have to just start to, draw magazine pictures of people or something like that. Because up here all I have is trees, right? So there's trees and there's water and there's more trees and there's a squirrel and there's lots of trees. So
yeah. No, of course, and that's a great idea, and that's what I've said to people is I don't, you just get a magazine and you find a figure there and use that. If you don't have a model in front of you, I can't find a figure right now, of course. Yeah. But yeah, you could even trace over it as a starting point and then move on to paper.
I think it's good
first. So just play. I think it's really important to just play and have fun.
Yeah, because I've never really been one for a sketchbook. Like I've never really had a sketchbook. And I think some of that just came from even way back in high school, where we had to do a sketchbook and we had to have a certain number of paintings, and it just became a task. Like in my mind, I had it associated with something that was something I had to accomplish because I had an externally imposed deadline on it, versus using it for my own kind of sense of self, and just playing and working through things. So it's kind of like at this ripe old age, I'm rediscovering a sketchbook.
Great.
We'll see.
I know what you mean. It's I've been a bit stop-start with sketchbooks. I do keep sketchbooks, and I certainly emphasize them in my teaching as well. But yes, I think there's something about having that pressure, and when you're at school or university, and keeping that sketchbook practice up. But I just keep little ones as well in a handbag. And if I'm waiting for the girls to come out of something, and then I might just sketch something in there just to keep myself busy.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, those are fun. Yeah, I know my sister does that too. I need to do that too. Like I think that was the whole point of it. It became so mark focused. It wasn't really about exploring your own creativity. But that was many, many years ago, so I think I probably could get over that hurdle if I really spent any time on it.
It's funny though, I think you're right. There's something about education, and you know, there was I don't know if you know Sir Ken Robinson. He's unfortunately, you know him, you've heard of him.
The Educator, yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, education kills creativity. And
yeah.
So I think there is something for that, but also in art school. I don't know what your experience was like. I had a great high school teacher, Mrs. Crawford, and I went to York University for my undergrad. Some great professors, but there were some, you know, not all the classes were great in that they were really tight. I remember I had a graphic design class, and I'm not a graphic designer. And so it wasn't great for me in that I felt quite hindered by it. So like you, I felt a bit put off by the sketchbook task for that class.
Yeah, I found our classes were pretty loose, and it was very much the teachers were all practicing artists as well, so they often would get involved in their own things. I think where for me actually the part that I really missed was actually technique. We didn't really learn a lot of specific technique. It was a lot of very exploratory. And so it's hard to completely explore and hone your skills if you're trying to figure out everything yourself, which, you know, for me was a bit of a challenge. But I know my sister went to Concordia and she wanted to do figures, and that was not really the theme of the school, and she felt she was always pushing against what the teachers wanted her to do. So it's kind of a fine balance. I think you have to sort of figure out, well, I was going to say figure out what you want to do, but really at that age you don't always know what you want to do, right? Because you haven't really explored it well enough.
Do you know, there was an amazing class I did at York University with Professor Barbara Dart. She taught artist techniques of and materials of the Renaissance artists, and we used Cellini's handbook, which I think I've got just there, the Craftsman's Handbook. And we had to make our own gesso and charcoal literally in the oven, and we had to
that'd be cool.
And it was amazing because I learned so many techniques. So it was really, really, as you said, they don't always focus so much on the techniques. They're really encouraging of go and explore, try, experiment, which is important as well.
It is, but to me it's kind of like trying to understand a book if you don't have the basics of reading. Like, I think there's some value in that, but I think at some point it becomes a barrier to really truly being able to immerse yourself in kind of what you're trying to articulate, because it gets frustrating if you can't do what's in your brain, right?
Absolutely. And I read Kate, and actually I think I've got it here, that when you were at Western, weren't you? And this was your prof.
Patterson Ewan.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, are you quite inspired by his use of color? Because your color is just, I love how you use color, especially the turquoise. I'm really always drawn to turquoise.
Thanks. You know, it's actually really a little bit sad because he was a really great artist. I mean, at the time that he was teaching us, I mean, his pieces were selling for 100,000 plus. And so he definitely had a presence on the world stage. I don't think he was a good teacher. I don't think he was the kind of person who really knew how to teach properly. I found that he was a little bit distant. So as a result, you know, he would kind of go, "Oh, that's shit." I'm like, okay, that's hard to hear, but okay. But how do I make it better? Like, what do I do with it? And so in actual fact, I was totally turned off painting. And my major was photography. I did a lot of printmaking and a lot of photo lithography, which I did enjoy because the teacher did spend a lot more time going through. Of course, things like photo lithography is very technically intensive. So you kind of have to learn those skills. So I kind of came to painting a little bit late. I mean, I fooled around with it for years. You know, obviously at the cottage or whatever, we'd paint. My sister and I would paint. But it took me a while to kind of come around to it because I had this feeling that, well, obviously I wasn't very good because he kept telling me everything I was doing was shitty. So
that was like my graphic design professor. Yeah. I came in and said, that's awful. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm actually okay with constructive criticism. I really appreciate good, solid constructive criticism, which is again why it's so great to have an arts community where people can kind of help you see what's not working with your piece and articulate it in a way though that allows you to kind of improve it and move forward. Versus it kind of is a bit of a roadblock when it's just like, yeah, it's shit. Yeah, it's not working. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, so
I don't think that would happen now. I would like to think it didn't. But you're right. Just because you're an artist, it doesn't mean you're a good teacher.
in a lot of cases it's like that, right? Like a great sales guy doesn't make a good sales administrator. Like I think sometimes there's this kind of whole concept that if you're good at one thing, you're going to be good at teaching it. And it's a very different skill set. Like for myself as well, I've had people ask if I'll teach, and I'm like, I'm just not a good patient teacher. I just don't think I'd be a good teacher. Like I love doing the creative adventures because they're 3 hours and they're fun and we drink wine and, you know, like that's cool. I love that part of it. I love the social part of it. But to do sustained classes, I think I'd be crappy at it. So I haven't done it. But who knows? Maybe I'll do it next week. No, I think it's important to kind of know your skill sets and know where you're at. But I don't know. I certainly have a group of artists that I also show stuff to, which is like, you know, I'm struggling. I just need some help. And especially my sister, because, you know, she knows me well enough. We can be super blunt. So that helps move it forward for sure.
Absolutely. And I also have some artist friends in the area, and I might send them a picture. What do you think? I'm a bit stuck. And it's so important to have that.
Mm-hmm. So what's kind of next for you? You've got your show coming up in a couple months, right?
I do. July 3rd, 4th, 5th, I think it is. It's a 3-day fair at Goodwood Racecourse. So it's indoors. And I'm really excited about it. I'm trying to produce lots more work and sign on friends to come and help me. Because I'm just thinking, well, you know, at some point you're going to need to use the loo, you know, go and get a drink. So I have some friends that are very kindly going to come and do an hour shift for me here or there.
That's nice.
Offer some support. But what tips can you give? Because I mean, in terms of sizes, I'd like to offer a variety of sizes, because I think some people, you know, they're maybe buying it for a flat, so they don't have as much wall space, or gift. Sometimes people want something smaller, which is also more affordable. Some people like a big wow piece.
I always like to put something really strong and really bold, or the piece that really probably more clearly articulates your work at the back of your booth, so it kind of really draws people in. I totally agree. It's good to have things at different price points. One of the things I was going to say when you were saying taking breaks and stuff, the first thing you need to do is get to know your neighbors super well, because for me that always makes or breaks, you know, the fair in terms of being able to not only just kind of, you know, spare each other off if you need to go for a drink or whatever, but also to save you from that other amateur artist that wants to suck all your time. You know, it can kind of have a plan to sort of pull them away.
Yes.
So, but I mean, you're lucky it's indoors, because that definitely alleviates some of those issues with having to deal with weather and pool noodles and, you know, but, you know, build your database. That's critical. That's kind of got to be a part that's really important, so you can continue to build those relationships.
Okay. And that would be sort of giving out cards.
I give out, yes, for sure. I give out cards. I give out postcards, actually. So I have a postcard that it actually has a number of different pieces, my contact information, and my zero risk commission policy. Yes. Because I find that people tend to keep those. I'm also not one of those artists that feels like, well, these were expensive, so I only want to give them out to people that might use them, because you just never know. I've had things that kids have picked up and they've handed them to their parents, and that's come out into a commission. So I'm a big fan of giving stuff away and then getting them literally to sign your guest book. And so sometimes I'll do a small draw or something just to encourage people to print clearly.
Oh, fantastic. That's a great idea.
So, because I think that's really your lifeblood for your next shows.
Yeah. I watched a few of your Talking to Artists series, and they're all fantastic. And I've always taken something from everyone.
Oh, good.
Little gems of advice. But I did, was it Lisa?
Yep.
And she's got the Blink catalog, which looks fantastic. But
it is.
But someone had seen your work maybe 3 years ago, and then they were in touch with you after the fact. So you're right. I guess you hand things out, but might come back.
You never know. Yeah. I've had with COVID too. I've had people that have seen me at shows 3 or 4 years ago, and now they're finally ready to buy. So, you know, I think you always can't judge a show based on what you sell that weekend. You have to judge it based on, you know, how many conversations did you have? How many emails did you have? What was the engagement level? Excuse me. Okay. Which I think is kind of really almost more important than what you sell at the show, because it allows you to build those relationships.
Yes.
So, well, believe it or not, we're actually almost out of time. That was so fast. I know. So I know. So I always like
for
to
making it so
end.
enjoyable.
You can't go yet, because I always
Okay.
like to ask, end each interview with, if money and time and everything was no problem, what would your big hairy ass goal be?
The hairy ass goal. Hilarious. I've seen you ask this question with your other Talking to Artists series, and I've been thinking about it. And I don't know, I mean, okay, so I'll be honest, at the moment, this studio space is my front room. So it's, you know, I've converted it, but I would love, love, love to have a really big, beautiful studio, pitched roof, you know, I could maybe put a bed
Lots of
up
light.
there, little wine fridge. So actually I escape the family anytime I need to. At the moment, I think that would be my big hairy ass goal. That's hilarious.
That's a wonderful hairy ass goal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, it was really fabulous to talk to you, and hopefully next time I get to the UK, I'll come and pop by.
Yeah,
Come and see your brand new studio with your gabled ceilings.
Hey, thank you so much for your time, and it was really great to meet with you. And
It was great to meet you too.
so easy to chat with you.
It was really fun. So enjoy your week.
Thanks so much. You too.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Sorry.